Let's get ready to RPG!
RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG!
Hey, what's up, everybody? Last minute stream here on a Friday afternoon, Halloween Friday afternoon. But we did last night, late night, get a Void update for Daggerheart and the long-awaited, no surprises here, release of the Bloodhunter. Now, I am not a Critical Role aficionado, so we're going to give it a few minutes before people get in, before we actually start looking into it. So we're going to try to keep this nice and tidy, try to keep this, 30, 45 minutes, famous last words, just because I again, I just wanted to quickly pop something in there because this came out and, people have been waiting for this for a while. It seems like it's been a long time. Feels like a long time. It's crazy that it feels like it's been a long time since we've gotten a Void update. The game came out like 5 months ago. In that time since, we've had Void updates and had, let's see, Brawler, Witch, Warlock, like we've had like 3 or 4 classes. We've had an entirely new domain, and yet somehow it feels like it's been forever. Oh, we had the transformation cards, new, so yeah, it's going to be pretty crazy. There's a new blood domain that is out with this as well. So we're going to take a look at the class, and we're going to take a look at the domain. I think there were some new adversaries and environments as well. I don't know if we'll get to those today. Again, I want to keep it nice and tight. Lunchtime stream for people, or a little post lunchtime stream on a Friday. No, it's Friday, it's Halloween. Who's working? Come on. Even if you're at the office, everyone's probably dressing up or something. Probably some party. At least there used to be in my time. Anyways, I was about to head out the door. I was going to take the dogs for a walk. I was going to get a haircut, and then I was like, "Oh shit, we had an update." So I guess we should maybe take a look at this. So this will be good. Now, again, what I was trying to say is I am not a Critical Role aficionado, so I don't know much about the Bloodhunter. I got strong Witcher vibes from it. I'm not sure if that's an accurate take or not, but we'll take a look at it when we take a look at the domains, the abilities and the cards and the domains. Because again, I don't really know what the Bloodhunter is. I'm led to believe it was a custom class that Matt made for his one of his previous campaigns. So, and that is confirming it is basically The Witcher. All right, it's a Witcher-made D&D 5e class. Okay, that was completely just based strictly off of vibes. So that was my sense. I get. Yeah, Matt seems like he has some pretty strong influences from certain projects and certain media, and that definitely seems to be like it's one of them. So yeah. All right, well, it's just about 1 o'clock. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. Casey says it's my understanding that Matt made it for one of his players who wanted to play a Witcher type character. Totally reasonable. All right. Well, shall we take a look then? All right. So we have here the Bloodhunter. It's a blade and blood. So yes, new domain. We've now got dread and blood. VV Ziggle says Sangromancy is officially on the menu. Time to homebrew a Death Knight with blood and dread domains to live out my full edgelord fantasy. I will say that this is very interesting to me, simply because obviously everyone knows my dream, right, of creating a 12 level dagger version of Daggerheart. But that would also include sort of restructuring some of the domains. And so it's always very interesting for me to see how they build new domains and where they fit into the structure. Now, obviously, Void has a lot of chance, can change a lot and things of that nature. But it's interesting to see how they see these domains fitting in between existing, spaces. And is it just a reprint of something else that's already been done? All right, so we've got Blade and Blood, which again, blood is a new domain. We'll get to that at the end of the class. We have pretty basic Daggerhearties here. Evasion is 9, so not the most evasive class. And we have our Hope feature. Blood Maledict. Spend 3 hope to target a creature within far range or in a vision from your Grim Psychometry. Until you finish a rest, take severe damage, or use this feature again. You have advantage on all action rolls against the target. So now Grim Psychometry is a class feature, which we'll get to here in a second. But basically, it's kind of a hunter's mark, except you can also pick them up in a vision, which we'll get down to in here in a second. I will say that, going back to the druid, I really like this kind of duration for certain abilities, particularly this take severe damage threshold, mostly because taking severe damage is something that in theory you can usually avoid by, if you go above your threshold, you can mark an armor slot and tick it down to major. But I just think that this is a lot. I think this is good. That's what I was going to say. But it's 3 hope, and then we get advantage on all action rolls. All action rolls. Notice it's not just attack rolls. It's all action rolls. So pretty powerful, mark. B, I like it. Personally feel Hunter's Mark feels much better for witchery types than Rangers. B, I completely agree with you. I hate the Hunter's Mark thing for Rangers. And I'll tell you the reason I hate it. Because to my knowledge, I could be wrong about this, but to my knowledge, that ability didn't really exist until like World of Warcraft. And World of Warcraft, the hunter had a mana bar. So it was a spell. It wasn't just like a weird random ability. So for me, the whole idea of the Hunter's Mark, I think, is stupid. I like this a lot better. And, I'm right there with you. Smendon, I might just apply that to the druid anyways. I think it's fantastic. I think that that you could probably just bolt this on right to the druid's shape change and be good for there. And I think they're starting to, one of the things about a game is, when the creators create the game, they don't know anything about the game. And then as they get more experience with the game and they hear feedback about the game, they start to learn more and more and more and more. All right. Roll for Combat says, what a shill. I'm not being paid by anyone, so how could I possibly be a shill? All right, so we've got 2 class features. Crimson Rite. You can enchant your strikes with a bloodthirsty power at the cost of your vitality. Mark a hit point to enchant one of your active weapons. Until you finish your next rest, that weapon deals physical or magical damage chosen when you use this feature, and an extra 1d6 damage, which scales up to 2d6 and 3d6. So there's this idea of exchanging your vitality for basically a little bit of extra damage. And again, I do like abilities that kind of encourage you not to rest. So, marking a hit point is the hugest price, but certainly you're like, hey, we should go rest. And you're like, I just marked my Crimson Rite. Let's keep going. So I do like that. And then here's that aforementioned Grim Psychometry. While inspecting a creature, a location, or an object within, basically right next to you, you can make a spellcraft roll. On a success, mark a stress to have a vision of the most recent violence involving the target. And until you finish a rest, you have advantage on any action roll to recall lore about things in that vision. So they have this kind of remote sensing ability. And it should be noted that we can, blood maledict off of people that we've seen in the vision from our Grim Psychometry. So if we were to come across, say, a grisly murder, we could use our Grim Psychometry and, maybe see a vision of the killer and then use our blood maledict to essentially kind of pre-mark them and get it all advantage roll on all action rolls against that target. Could include hunting them down, sniffing them out, finding them, locating them, right? We're driven by this sort of magical blood connection. Very cool. Very Witcher. And more importantly, actually seems like a pretty cool stuff. Yeah. Shots fired. Yeah. Touching the ground, having the, the flash, like the sudden, the cut to the horrific violence, the scream, cut back to the kind of the 10,000 yard stare of the Bloodhunter. Very cool. Ian Clark providing some extra components for. Oh no, it's not working again. Why is it not working again? Lately, we've been having this issue where our thing has been dying on me. My little call out ability, unfortunately. All right, well, we'll see if that continues to work. All right. All right, so here we have a suggest. So we've got 3 subclasses with the Bloodhunter. So as a Bloodhunter, you harness the power of Hemocraft, that is blood magic, in your relentless pursuit of evil creatures. We get 2 sets of list suggested traits because there's 3 subclasses. One is more agility focused, and one is more strength focused. Okay. Basic stuff here, basic stuff here. Looks like we have pretty normal upgrade options. Nothing like special, like the Brawler has that kind of upgrade option. Okay, so pretty basic thing here. We basically have a class that's really good at potentially finding a target who did violence, hunting them down, tracking them down, killing them, and doing extra damage. That's our basic element. Once again, I will reiterate that it's a little strange to me that the way multi-classing works in Daggerheart is it's strange to me that you get the class features, but you don't get the hope feature. And it's funny to me because, like, I view in many cases, like, this hope feature, I think is, you know, in this case, I like this one, actually. I like that you get the Grim Psychometry because I feel like that's really essential to the class. But in some ways, I feel like the Blood Maledict is way more important to the class fantasy than the Crimson Rite. But in any case. All right. So we've got 3 subclasses. We have the Order of the Ghost Slayer, the Order of the Mutant, and the Order of the Lycan. So cool. We have 3 official subclasses. Note that the Slayer uses the spellcrafting trait of agility, and the Lycan uses strength. So again, we've seen this already, but reiterating the point that subclasses can indeed use different parts, different things. So that's pretty neat. We've already seen that, but reiterating that you don't need to use the same spellcasting trait. I know some people were originally like, oh, it's got to all be the same. No, it doesn't have to be the same. All right, so we have the Ghost Slayer. Chasing Death. While you have 1 to 3 unmarked hit points, you can use your Crimson Rite feature without paying the hit point cost. That's the one that gives us the bonus damage. If you have only 1 hit point left, you roll D8s instead of D6 for your Crimson Rite, and the ability is called Chasing Death. So get low on hit points, and you can keep using your abilities. Shadowed Grit. When the GM gains a fear from a duality dice roll, any duality dice roll, not just yours, you can mark a stress to gain a hope. Now, I will say, generally speaking, I think that paying a stress is a much more precious resource than gaining a hope. But that's a pretty cool, that's a pretty neat option to take depending on where you are in the day. And also, I think this is the kind of ability, too, that matters. This changes a lot more depending on how many people are in your game and how often you guys are making duality dice rolls. But that's pretty cool. Order of the Ghost Slayer, Veil Walker. Order of the Ghost Slayer specialization, sorry. The Veil Walker. You can briefly slip into the realm between the living and the dead. Spend 2 hope to disappear and then reappear next to a creature or a corpse. You then have advantage on the next attack roll you make in this scene. So basically, we get a kind of Dimension Door ability. And, we're ghosty. Sure, why not? And then lastly, mastery ability. We get a full spectral form. You have another death move option. That's cool. All right. Neat. I mean, look, I mean, everything in Daggerheart's kind of cool. Like, oh, cool, you can teleport. That's really neat. Oh, cool, you can, spend stress to gain hope when the GM is gaining fear. Cool. When the going gets tough, you get tougher. But a new death move option is cool. That's like a new mechanical thing here. I mean, we kind of saw that with that one. You can't choose a death move. It's a transformation one, but you have another death move option, Spectral Form. When you choose this option, you clear a hit point, your body becomes spectral, and you have resistance to physical damage, and you can pass through objects. This form ends if you clear any more hit points. It also ends if you mark your last hit point, which forces you to take a different death move. You're shunted to the nearest open space if you're inside an object when the form ends. So basically, when you die, you can instead come back with 1 hit point and be in a spectral form. If you die, you're only at 1 hit point. If you die again, you can't pick this ability again. You have to either choose, avoid death or risk it all or whatever. And also, if you get healed at all, you come back. So you can't be in your spectral form and just think. But there doesn't seem to be a length of time. So if you stayed at 1 hit point, you could be in this form for presumably forever, as long as you don't clear any hit points. Now, granted, that's a scary thought to be in, but hey, it's definitely very ghosty, and that's pretty cool. Ooh, spooky. All right. I like it. That's neat. Slipping, a little bit of teleporting, a little bit of spectral form feels very, very, ghosty. Yes, yes. If you clear another hit point, it looks like you come back, and then when you die, you get to not die again. So that's pretty. I say that's pretty powerful. So this is probably OP, but we'll leave it as being an innovative space. I don't know that this might, I don't know if you should be able to keep doing this over and over again on the same day or whatever, but maybe you should have to like roll for a scar or something. Make it there be some kind of cost, That's true, Nami. Generally speaking, Nami, you are quite correct. It's something that will only happen when you die. Certain abilities that trigger, like in very rare circumstances, which you don't want to have happen anyways, are very weird abilities because you're kind of like, am I supposed to be excited that I got an ability that only triggers when something really bad happens to me? Anyways. All right. Especially in a game where you can just choose to avoid death. All right. Order of the Mutant. So you have the Mutagens ability. You employ mutagenic toxins created to enhance your abilities. When you finish a rest, you can drink such a toxin to gain its effects until you finish your next rest. So every rest, you get a new ability that lasts till your next rest. The effects include a +1 bonus to one trait of your choice and a -1 penalty to a different trait of your choice. Neat. You also get a choice of the following benefits. Celerity. If you are restrained, that's immobile, or vulnerable, that's basically people have advantage on you, you can mark a stress to end the condition on yourself. Okay. Durable. Your armor score increases by 2. That means you get 2 more boxes. And Hunter's Sense. You have advantage on any action roll you make to track a creature, and you can see in complete darkness. So obviously, we're probably going to be taking a +1 to our primary trait most of the time. And a -1 to one that we don't care about. So that's probably fairly powerful. Again, having the ability to break out of restrained or vulnerable without having to spend an action or anything like that seems pretty good. Depending on how this durable is rated, I can't remember how temporary armor score increases work, but I'm pretty sure like if you mark these 2 armor scores and then you lose them and then you regain them in your next rest, it's like you get 2 free armor. So that's pretty cool. The next is specialization. You get improved mutagens, and now we also get new options. We have Nerves of Steel. Whenever you mark a stress, you can spend 2 hope instead. Now that is very powerful. Wow. Like, as we said, we actually had a conversation once about how much hope is stress worth. And we all agreed that 3 hope is probably worth more than 1 stress. And that 1 hope probably isn't worth a stress. So, 2 hope for a stress is probably right about right. So That's pretty good. And that's whenever you must mark a stress. So you could do that if an enemy attacks you and makes you mark stress or something like that. So that's pretty cool. That's true, Nami, but remember that this is only when they roll fear. So there's a little asterisk on this one. But my point is that marking a stress to gain a hope, I think, is a bad return on investment. Now, if it was mark a stress to gain 2 hope, I would say that's pretty good. So that's why I'm saying when, right, Thad, you could spend 2 hope to basically remove vulnerable or restrained. Rapidity. Your evasion increases by 1. I don't know. It seems kind of weak. It's probably not, but it seems kind of weak. I mean, it's a 5% chance to increase. It's one of the things about things like invasion increases is it doesn't matter at all until it matters 1 time in 20. Right? It doesn't matter at all. 19 times out of 20, having your evasion be 1 higher doesn't matter. It only matters if your evasion was 15, now it's 16, and the GM rolls a 15. That's the other way to look at it, right? Is that 19 times out of 20, it doesn't matter at all. They would have missed anyways, or they would have hit anyways. And I understand math and I understand statistics, obviously, but there is something to be said. Like you could probably legitimately have this on you and for sessions and have it actually never, make a difference. Now that's true, Smendon. There aren't many things out there that increase evasion in the game, to my knowledge. And I think that's on purpose because I do think ultimately they want you to not be getting missed to that much. All right, Iron Skin. Your severe damage threshold increases by a number equal to your proficiency. So if our proficiency is, say 3 or 4, where only our severe damage threshold. So, okay. Volatile toxins. We can choose 2 benefits. Okay, nice. Instead of 1. But if we do, we mark a hit point and we cannot clear it until we finish our next rest. I love mechanics that lock you out of something. Something that I think is a really fun lever to play with. And there's a lot of things that we've talked about doing that with. Hit points. We talked about doing it with hope. The idea of spellcasters maybe having sort of a longer duration buff, almost like a concentration type thing. We were talking about this last night with the way I used to do buffs in 3rd edition, where basically players would lock out their spell slots. Yeah, exactly, Jake. Yeah, this is your spell slot buff thing from last night. Jake, yes, exactly. Oh no, it looks like my little grabber thing is down. Dang. Why does that happen? Oh, I know. Wait. It might be. No, it's up there. Interesting. All right. That's cool. I like that you get to do 2 of them. And then the last one is Mastered Mutagens. The bonus goes to +2, -2. That's a lot. And we get 3. We also get 3 new options. Remember, we could choose 2 of them by marking a hit point. Who's not going to mark a hit point? Especially since we get benefits if we have lower hit points, right? Aether Blood. Within your line of sight, you can see creatures and objects that are invisible, and visual illusions appear transparent to you. If a creature has been transformed by magic, you can see its true form. Fury. When you make an attack roll, you can mark a stress to gain a bonus to that roll equal to your proficiency. That's a pretty big bonus to hit. Steel Flesh. Your major damage threshold increases by a number equal to your proficiency. So then if we have Iron Skin and Steel Flesh, we can become significantly more chonky. Obviously, Nerves of Steel plus Fury is a nice combination, especially if you have a lot of hope. There's some pretty cool combinations that you could do here between being able to pick 2 of them, for sure. Yeah. And I like it. It's a mix between obviously combative benefits like bonuses to attack rolls and evasions and severe thresholds. And then, but also you get some cool hunter stuff like the Aether Blood and the Hunter Senses. Jams, I mean, to be fair, I think almost any sort of damage-based class, most classes are probably going to get proficiency. I really do think that's true. Maybe not everyone gets to 6, but I think most people are going to be at 5 at least. So yeah, I mean, obviously, if you have multiple things that are tied to your proficiency, you're going to want to, let's say 1, 2, 3 of your abilities are tied to proficiency. You're definitely going to want to be probably getting that +6 to proficiency at some point, or sorry, a proficiency of 6 at some point. And then our last subclass is the Order of the Lycan. Now this one's different. This one's strength. Werewolf. Oh, sick. You gain the Werewolf transformation card. Your rolls to perceive hearing and scent have advantage. Hell yeah. That's awesome. That's cool. So for, again, remember we had the transformation cards. And so this one just gives you a transformation card. That's pretty cool. Control the beast. While in your wolf form, you can apply that form's bonus die to your agility and strength action rolls. I think it normally only goes to your instinct. So pretty cool. That's a big flavor win, fun. And remember, one of the cool things about Daggerheart, I cannot stress this enough, is because they don't give a fuck. Daggerheart don't care. Fuck it, we ball. You're level 1. You're a level 1 Bloodhunter from the Order of the Lycan. Boom, straight out the bat, level 1, tier 1, game starts. You're a werewolf. There's no like, well, you're kind of a werewolf. You have pointy ears and, 10 levels later after you've put 5 ancestry feats into it, once a day you can become a werewolf for like 1 round or something like that, One of the things I like about Daggerheart is they just go, nah, you're a werewolf, straight up from the beginning. Just be what you want to be, Smendon, I can see people ping-ponging between getting an extra hit point and the extra proficiency when they level up. My concern is that this may railroad players when they level up. Yes, Smendon, I think that could be a concern as well, too. All right, so the next is specialization. Feral Hide. While in your wolf form, you gain a bonus to your damage thresholds equal to your tier. That's both of your damage thresholds. So +2, +3, +4. Okay, you're tougher. A little bit tougher. Again, your strength, you're tough. Lycan regeneration. While in your wolf form, with all of your hit points marked, you can mark a stress to clear a hit point. You can do this while unconscious. So basically, if you get completely taken out, you can avoid death, then mark a stress and come back. Right? Because when we mark all of our hit points, right, we have to make a death move. And if we make a death move, potentially we're either fine or we're dead. The only one that would be avoid death. Interesting. Jam says, I think it's like the orc thing. You instantly pop back up. So then why does it say you can do this while unconscious? Like, at what point are we actually unconscious? And that's pretty good. Regardless. I mean, that's also a specialization ability. Lastly, we have the mastery ability. Master the beast. Now, obviously the mistake here. Right, Sven, that's what I'm saying. I think you would choose the death move, avoid death. Well, I don't know. That's the thing about avoid death. Avoid death isn't necessarily that your character is unconscious, right? You're out of the combat, and we describe later how you die. There's kind of a narrative element to it. But this totally should have been called Unleash the Beast. But anyways, while you're in your wolf form and would mark your last stress, You can instead put one of your domain cards from your loadout into your vault. You can't recall that domain card until you finish a long rest. When you frenzy from marking your last stress while in wolf form, you gain 2 hope. So basically, you can kind of start losing your abilities in order to not lose your last stress. And that way you avoid going into the berserk werewolf form. As a reminder, with the werewolf transformation card, when you mark all your stress, you basically become, unleashed. And so I guess that's why it's called Master of the Beast, now that I think about it. Because basically, instead of losing your last stress and becoming unleashed, you instead kind of control it, right? And you can master it. Now, granted, you'll eventually run out of powers and abilities, but yeah. Now, the thing is here, it says when you are in your wolf form and would mark your last stress. Does that mean that's only the case? Can we spend that stress and instead put stuff into our domain? In that case, do we have like this extra reservoir of like 5 to 6 or 7 stress? Or is it only if it's forcing us to mark it? I'm not entirely sure how that would work. Like if I have 1 stress left, I can spend that stress, right? You can't spend something you don't have. I can spend it. And because I'm about to mark it, can I instead master the beast and move something from my domain, from my loadout into my vault? In which case, I kind of have this pretty nice reservoir of extra stress available to me as long as I'm willing to, keep moving stuff out of my stuff, moving stuff out of my vault. Yeah. Anyways, I think that's really cool. I love this idea of a subclass that gives you a transformation card. I love that it gives you extra abilities to control that. Transformation cards are pretty simple, right? They're just 1 card. This is kind of a subclass that's tied into a transformation card, and that's very awesome. I am a big fan of this one. So this is obviously my favorite, full stop. All right. Well, let's take a look at the blood domain, because remember, this is a blade and blood. Now, I should note, blade domain is the domain of the warrior and the ranger. It's mostly strength and agility based abilities, and again, this class seems to mostly be a strength and agility based class. You can see here that we'll see how we go from here. Now, the blood domain, on the other hand, we're about to look at. So these are our level 1 powers. We have 2 spells and 1 ability. Excuse me. I see some people asking about all right. So just so that the werewolves. When you mark 1 or more hit points, you can also mark a stress to enter your wolf form. While in this form, you gain a D10 wolf die that you apply to all attack and damage rolls. When you would gain a hope in wolf form, you mark stress instead. When you mark your last stress while in wolf form, you go into a frenzy. Roll a number of D20s equal to your tier and automatically deal that much damage to all creatures, friend or foe, within very close range. Then you drop out of wolf form. That is what werewolf does. Basically, when you transform into your wolf form, you get this bonus D10 that basically makes you a combat monster, for lack of a better word, which is pretty cool. So, yeah, very cool. Blood Spike. Make a spellcast roll against a target within far range. On a success, mark a stress to deal D10 using magic damage using a proficiency. On a success with hope, they also mark a stress. On a roll with fear, you mark a stress. So this is a very high damage, very high range spell, but it's very costly because potentially you might mark 2 stress. That's rough. Lifeblood Talisman. Mark a hit point to conjure a talisman infused with your essence. It appears in your hand, and whoever carries it gets its benefit. Whenever they mark 2 or more hit points, they can spend a hope to reduce the number of hit points marked by 1. It then disappears. So this is very similar to the runic ward thing, except we're marking a hit point. This is kind of a class that really wants to live at the edge because it seems like you're marking stress a whole lot. You want your hit points marked. You're marking hit points a lot. I do like classes that give you a benefit to having hit points marked and then give you ways to interact with that and mark hit points, which is pretty cool. These are fine. Again, we get blade abilities too, because remember, like the warrior cool stuff with our swords and slashing, that's going to come from blade, right? This is all of our blood magic. All right, level 2, we get Brand of Castigation and Vitality Manipulation, both spells. I should also note Lifeblood Talisman has a recall of 0. These are 1 and 1. 1, 1, 0. Okay. Brand of Castigation. When you deal damage to a creature, mark a stress to sear a red mark on them. Until this mark disappears, you always know the direction of the marked creature relative to you, and that creature marks a stress every time it deals damage to an ally of yours within very close range of you. The mark disappears if you use this spell again. So, again, a super hunter's mark, but makes sense because it's a spell. And of course, obviously, this is kind of built into the idea of long duration villains. I mean, ideally, you would cast this, you would put this on somebody, mark them even if they leave, and run away. Joshua, thank you so much. Have a beer on me. Have a wonderful Friday. Thank you for all you do. Josh, thank you so much. I will, buddy. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. We're just having a little fun here. Take an hour out of our day to take a look at the new class. Again, I like that this ties into the fantasy of the class. I think it's cool that I think it's important that Daggerheart have things that aren't just combat focused. I will say, I think abilities like this are really smart because this is a cool, what I'll call non-combat ability. You can mark them. You always know what direction they are. But then it also has combat potential, right? Where if you're guarding your allies, if they want to attack, if they want to deal damage to you or your allies, they're going to take stress. So it's a great way to sort of, keep the enemy at bay, because if they keep attacking you, it's almost, or your allies, it's like hurting them. It's almost like, well, they're being castigated. So that's a very solid combative ability. And so it's neat when I like it when an ability can do 2 things, right? And I think this is actually a good template to use in general for those kind of abilities. Vitality Manipulation. Make a spellcraft roll against a target within very close range. If you cast this on an ally, make the roll with advantage. On a success, mark a stress and choose one of the following effects. They grow calmer and clear of stress. If you succeed with hope, they clear 2 stress. Or they grow anxious and mark a stress, or they mark 2 stress. Wow. This is a stress damage. Now, it is very close. So basically, they essentially mirror, melee range, but it's a stress healer and a stress clearer. Now, most of the time it's going to be 1 for 1, but 50% of the time it's going to be 1 for 1. But 50, whatever it is, 5% of the time or whatever, when you crit, you're going to clear 2 or mark 2. So on average, it's about 1.5. So you're trading 1 stress for 1.5. That's pretty good. And also, you only mark the stress if you fail or if you succeed. So you don't mark the stress if you fail. So definitely pretty powerful to have basically stress healing and stress damage dealing. Again, at very close range, but strong. Actually, both of these are pretty cool, all things considered. Blood Puppet. High recall cost. Make a spellcraft roll against a creature, living or dead, within far range. On a success, spend a hope to control the target by causing them to move, attack, or both. If you do both, choose the order. If you cause the creature to move, they move to a location you choose within close range of them. If you cause the creature to attack, make a spellcraft roll against a target within melee range of them. On a success, deal D10 physical damage using your proficiency. So it's essentially a ranged AoE or a ranged target, because you're not actually using the monster. Like, you get to move them, that's fine, but you're using your spellcasting roll to attack. You're using your damage to attack, to do the damage. You're not actually attacking with them. It's kind of a very gamist, clever way to sort of make it seem like you're controlling somebody and having them attack. You're like blood bending them without actually being broken and getting to use the monster's, attack. Burning Blood is our other option. It's also 2 recall. Make a spellcraft roll, 12. On a success, mark a hit point as you conjure a bead of blood, which you lob at far range. A wave of heat fills the area, igniting the vitals of all those caught within it. It's a fireball. Each target within the area marks a hit point. On a success with hope, each target instead marks 2 hit points. Now, this is interesting. So, this is interesting because I'm going to say something here that's kind of controversial, which is I wish Fireball was like this. Because the thing I don't like about Fireball... Hey, Smendon, thank you so much.
Smendon tipped $10. Appreciate you jumping on early to stream. I feel like DP are stretching their legs a bit more now with some of these new classes and domains in the void.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I really appreciate that. That's very nice of you. What is this? There, it's right there. Where is my stuff? Here it is. Sorry. I definitely feel like they are getting more comfortable with the design, for sure. For sure. For sure. Thank you, Smendon. But if your ally goes down in a fight and use Blood Puppet on them, would you entertain the idea of letting the down player roll their normal damage dice instead? Maybe, Steven, but keep in mind, with D10, you're probably rolling pretty well here. Anyways, what I was saying with Burning Blood is, like, one of the things I don't like about Fireball is that, you have to make a spell casting roll, and then when it lands, like, everybody has to make a reaction roll. It's a lot of dice rolling, and then you roll all that damage, and you have to compare that number of damage rolled to all of these different thresholds. And, it makes I guess it makes a certain amount of sense. But I'm also like, when it comes to an AoE thing, like, I kind of would rather it just, be like, mark a hit point, mark 2, like mark 1, mark 2. Like, I don't know. This is going to be so much faster to resolve than it Fireball would be, and that's, I really appreciate that a lot. Okay. Obviously we have to mark a hit point too. So, because dealing automatic damage and all this other stuff, but still, I mean, it's just one of those things. Because it's like, okay, you throw the fireball and they're going to make their reaction roll or whatever, but most of the time they're going to take, 1 or 2 points of damage, right? Like, I mean, yeah, they might take 3 occasionally or whatever like that, but yeah. And Jam says, I have a bard in our long-term game, and yes, I agree. Fireball takes a little time to resolve. And a lot of the AoE type stuff takes a long time to resolve. In fact, that's always been true in almost every D&D game. The red dragon flies in, breathes its breath, roll all the damage dice. Then every single person has to make a reflex save. Then every single person has to figure out, are they taking half, they taking double, they taking 0, they taking, full. Then they all have to subtract their hit points. So it's just a lot of work. And in fact, in Daggerheart, you actually make an extra roll, because in Daggerheart, you have to make the initial roll. Where in D&D you just cast it. In Daggerheart, you have to make a spell casting check first. Then you make your damage roll. Then everyone makes their reaction roll, and then they make the comparison if they take full or half. Then they make the comparison to their 3 damage thresholds, and then they mark 1, 2, or 3 damage. Spend an armor. You know what I mean? It's a very lengthy process for sure. But it always has been. So it's not like it's a new lengthy process. It's always been a lengthy process in these type of games. I'm simply saying this Burning Blood kind of gets around that. Grizzly Harpoon is our first 4th level ability. This is also a spell. A lot of spells. Makes sense, right? We're manipulating blood. You launch a harpoon of blood at a location or creature within far range. If it's a location, mark a stress to pull yourself to a position within melee range of it. So you can launch a harpoon blood and get over here, but so you can hook shot for Zelda fans. If the target is a creature, make a spellcasting roll. On a success, mark stress, deal 3d8 magic damage to it, and then pull the target straight towards yourself or pull yourself straight towards the target, ending within melee range of each other. So this is very much a hook shot. I mean, you could also be Spider-Man. I went Legend of Zelda, as it is a grizzly harpoon. But I mean, now I'm imagining the guy like with this bloody spider web swinging around. Weave the flesh. Once per rest, mark a hit point to allow every ally within close range to clear a hit point or a stress. You can mark a stress to allow, wow, that's very powerful. Mark a hit point and a stress to give every ally a hit point and a stress. So that could be, now, obviously, if you have a bigger party, that's way more powerful. But like if you have a 4 or 5 person party, it's like, hey, I'm going to mark 1 and 1, and you guys can heal a total of 4 and 4. That's pretty good return on investment. It's also a neat little, you think blood, it's all just like, death, blood harpoon, burning blood. And then it's like, yeah, but also I can, heal people and restore their vitality. So I think that's pretty neat. Level 5, Mutual Suffering, another spell. When an attack from a creature causes you to mark 1 or more hit points, you can make a reaction roll using your spellcasting trait against the creature. On a success, the creature marks the same number of hit points as you did, and you can't use the spell again until you finish a rest. Mark, thank you for the $5 super chat, says, yes, back to something popular. Heart, dagger hype. Sorry, yeah, Mark. Mark's been disappointed because this week we've been doing first looks and the One Ring deep dive. We have streamed every day since Sunday. We streamed Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and now today, Friday. So this is a lot of VODs to catch up with this week. One thing I like to point out, I think we all have a knee-jerk reaction. I still have this knee-jerk reaction. I almost said something, and I think it's really important to remember this with Daggerheart. I know people who've been playing the game now for a while know this, but it's very tempting to look at a spell like this and go, ugh. Why would I ever take this? I can only use it once per rest. And yeah, sure. Like I take a couple point, if I get a big hit, 2 or 3 hit points of damage, maybe my GM allows the 4 hit point rule. If I take 3 or 4 hit points of damage, I can make a spellcasting trait and make them take 3 or 4 points of damage. And then that's it. I can, only use 1. I can only use it once. Well, yeah, but remember, you can swap it out. So once you've used the spell, put it into your vault, and bring in something new. That's part of the fun of this game is that, you're locked out of using this ability until you finish a rest, but it can, be in there. So I think that's really, really cool for sure. All right. Parasite of the Will. Make a spellcraft roll against a target within very far range. So this is, very, very far. This is our longest range spell we've had yet. On a success, mark a hit point. So the idea here, I think, is that you are trying to do something more discreetly. Mark a hit point to conjure a tiny magical bloodworm that burrows into the target. On a roll with hope, they aren't even aware of the worm. You have advantage on any presence roll against the target, and whenever they make a roll, you can spend a hope to give that roll disadvantage. You can destroy the bloodworm to cause the target to mark a hit point. So again, it's not just combat. Now, granted, you could totally use this, in combat. Whenever they make a roll, you could spend a hope, give them disadvantage. But the idea, I think, mostly of this is a way to sort of, create the sort of Star Trek Wrath of Khan kind of evil blood parasite thing that's going to sort of weaken their will and cause their mind to become rattled, So pretty neat. Bloodbind is our level 6 spell. Make a spellcrafting roll again within far range. On a success, mark stress as you slow their vitality. They are both temporarily restrained and temporarily vulnerable. Can't move, and everyone has advantage against them. Each time the target is spotlighted, while either of these conditions persist on them, the target takes D10 magic damage using your proficiency. The spell ends early if you use it again. That's pretty good. That's actually really good. That's a nice debuff. I mean, it's damage. If I'm reading it correctly, all right. I know that there's been some discussion about how this actually is supposed to work, but generally speaking, my understanding is that most of the time, when you want to end a temporary condition on a target, you spotlight them and then end the condition. I know that the GM move sort of makes it indicate that you might not have to spotlight them, but assuming you follow the rule that you need to spotlight an adversary in order to end a condition on them and they can end it, that means that in order to get rid of both of these, you would have to spotlight them twice. And both times would be just used, that spotlight would be used just to remove restrain and vulnerable. And each time you did that, they would take D10 magic damage using proficiency. So 4d10, 5d10, twice. And that's eating up 2 activations, 2 uses of the GM move, and they still haven't done anything. Or you could leave them immobilized and vulnerable, and that might really restrict what they can do. Or you could just stop spotlighting them, in which case you've kind of taken them out of the fight. So this one's really strong. This is one of the stronger abilities that we've seen, which makes sense is why it's 2 to bring in and out, but still. Okay. Vital Ward. Mark a hit point to trace a circle of blood around you. At very close range. While within the circle, you have resistance to your choice of physical or magical damage. Powerful. Allies also gain this benefit. The circle disappears if you move out of it, if you mark it 2 more hit points or cast the spell again. So this is a very strong, resistance is half damage. But obviously if you take 2 hit points, but as long as you have some armor and you're already taking resistance, potentially you could be very, very strong here. So there's both of these abilities are very powerful. These level 6 abilities are very powerful. Danjamin says, it does seem like there's a bit of power creep in all the Void classes. Danjamin, I have noticed that as well. And I think one of the reasons for that, Danjamin, is it's better to shoot low on your initial releases than to overdo it. You can always go up. It's hard to go down. And, I think a lot of people, I think they undershot, I think with some of the power level in some of the initial releases. Not every case, not all the places, but I think in some cases, I think it's a little undershot, including with the monsters. I think, some people have noted the monsters' damage values don't seem to scale fast enough. And, we saw that with 4th edition D&D. They didn't get the monster numbers right until they got to Monster Manual 3. It's heresy, slightly small side tangent. It's heresy, but one of the things I always talk about is how in a perfect world, if I released an RPG game, I almost would, let's say I released Daggerheart and it was 12 level Daggerheart. There's a part of me, and I know people hate this, but there's a part of me that goes, I would only want to release tier 1. Now in Daggerheart, obviously tier 1 is literally level 1, but let's imagine a world where tier 1 was levels 1, 2, and 3. Tier 2 is level 4, 5, and 6. Tier 3 is 7, 8, 9, and then tier 4 is 10, 11, 12. My initial release would be like, hey, here's a bunch of monsters for level 1. Here's a bunch of powers for level 1. We haven't figured out our game yet, and we really can't wait until tens of thousands of people play it, and we ourselves get real world experience from tens of thousands of playtesters. And higher level abilities are harder to get right. Higher level monsters are hard to get right. We feel fairly confident in the low level game, and we can just spend our entire time playtesting at low level and get that right. And, then what we can do is we can release the tier 2 stuff as part of a playtest and let people sort of expand into that. I don't know. I know some people hate the idea of buying a quote unquote incomplete game, but I don't know. For me, there's a very strong practical reasoning for doing that. All right. Last set of abilities, and then we'll wrap it up for the day. Blood Touched and Vampiric Strike are our level 7 spells. We do get another ability, and this is our classic level 7 ability where if you really stack up on a domain, you get some benefits. So Blood Touched is if 4 or more of your cards in your loadout are from blood. When you take enough damage to mark 2 or more hit points, gain a hope. Very cool. And for every 3 hit points you have marked, gain a +1 bonus to your evasion. I mean, it's going to be really tough for this Bloodhunter to take anything other than stress, stress improvements, hit point improvements, and proficiency improvements. But unfortunately, that's true for a lot of characters, unfortunately. But yeah, this is pretty this is a nice little set of abilities here. Your damage that you're taking gives you hope. Your hit points that you're taking are giving you evasion. I mean, this is just a win-win-win, and all of your abilities basically, especially because imagine you hit them, you do enough damage that they take 2 or more, you gained a hope from the attack, and then you just immediately spend the hope to clear a stress. That's very powerful. Charmander, yes. This is a blood domain card. So basically you would have blood touched, 3 blood domains, and you can have 1 other card that you could have that isn't blood. And that works for all of them. Every domain has something like this. Vampiric Strike, very, very powerful, very useful. Probably just a go-to one to have in your, honestly, in your loadout. I mean, it's any attack roll, so you can just keep this in there and just really use this to help manage your hit points and stress, which you have been consuming at a great deal for your entire career. All right, our last set of abilities, and then we'll wrap up. Life Leash is level 8. Spend a hope to allow yourself and a willing ally within far range to redistribute your marked hit points between you. You then can't target that ally until you rest. That's awesome, because you gain a bunch of benefits if we're low on hit points, potentially, depending on how we're built. Our ally could get really fucked up. We spend 1 hope. We take all their damage. We basically heal them to full. We are in trouble, but at least we get some sick advantages from it. Like maybe we're blood touched and now we're getting, we're getting evasion bonuses, and we can still use our abilities for free now because we have so many hit points marked. Meanwhile, our ally is healed to full. And again, there's no rule that we can't, use this again, just not on that same ally. If the GM piles damage onto us, we can swap life with somebody else, like a Guardian who's in full mega defense mode. We get a full heal. They're at low hit points, but they're in their super defensive stance. And the GM just kind of, spent all that time attacking us, and we didn't really do, didn't really accomplish anything towards their goal. Very cool. And also, abilities like this feel cool to use, and so neat. And of course, it's a 2 stressor to 2 refresh costs, because that's one of those abilities that they really want to penalize you for just swapping this in when you need it. It's cool to have. It's like if you put it into your vault for free or loadout for free during rest, you're kind of taking up a slot. But if you swap it in at the last minute, you got to pay the price, which I think this is a great way to balance abilities, by the way, in this game. Runic Adrenaline. Your practice of blood magic has seeped into your bloodstream, enhancing your vitals in moments of urgency. When you roll with advantage, you have D8 instead of a D6, as long as you've taken any amount of damage. After you make a strength or an agility or a finesse roll, you can mark a hit point to roll a D8 and add it to the result. So basically, we can give ourselves advantage for a hit point. Strength, agility, and finesse are going to be most of our attacks, all of our spell casting. And it also means that if we get advantage, we're a little bit better. So this is like a little minor bonus. The real advantage here is we can have a D8 and add it to the result for a hit point. And again, we benefit from lowering our hit points. Level 9, Bloodbath. Once per rest, spend a hope to unleash waves of blood. Make a single spellcasting roll against every adversary within close range. On a success, a target marks a hit point and a stress. On a failure, a target marks a stress. Each ally marks a stress as well, but clears a hit point. A couple of things. Number one, again, this is a much faster and easier way to do an AoE, right? The Bloodhunter goes in, casts their bloodbath, they make a spellcraft roll. They succeed. Okay? When they succeed, mark a hit point. If they fail, mark a stress. Every ally, mark a stress, gain a hit point. No lengthy, cumbersome damage rolls and comparing all the things and making 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 reaction rolls. This is a lot cleaner. Level 9, Glyph of Hemorrhaging. Cool names. Make a spellcasting roll against a creature within far range. Also, there's kind of like a glyph theme I'm noticing with the Bloodhunter. A lot of marking, which is neat. On a success, mark a hit point. We've seen this again and again. To sear the target with a magical glyph that lasts until the GM spends 2 fear to remove it, or until you take severe damage. Whenever the target marks any amount of hit points while that glyph is on them, you can mark a stress to make them take an additional hit point. This feels a little weak. I mean, we had to mark a hit point just to put it on them. And then whenever they take damage, we have to mark a stress to make them take one more damage. I mean, I guess that could be pretty good to like burn down a big hit point creature. But for a level 9 power, I kind of wanted more from this. I don't know what I wanted, but I wanted more. Crimson Adamance is our first level 10 ability, and it's an card, and it's an ability. When you would mark your last hit point, spend a hope to mark a stress instead. So basically, if you would die, if you have hope and stress, you can keep going. So it basically kind of extends your hit point bar. I mean, we're marking a lot of stress with our other abilities, so I don't know how useful this is. But, and also I'm not as worried about spending my last hit point because it's Daggerheart and I can avoid death, but I feel like this is one of those abilities that like would be really cool in 5th edition, but isn't as cool in Daggerheart, but who knows? I mean, again, it's neat that, you know, your character doesn't go down, right? They just keep standing, but for me, it's not that big of a deal. And our last level 10 ability, Sanguine Feast. Make a spellcasting roll against an adversary within close range. On a success, spend 2 hope to mark 1 to 3 hit points. And the target marks twice the number of hit points. If this causes the target to mark their last hit point, you can clear the hit points you marked to cast this spell. Wow. So make a spellcasting roll, spend 2 hope, and then if you're successful, you can basically make them take 6 hit points of damage. And if that kills them, you get your hit points back. So it's just 2 hope to do 6 damage. Wow. That's really powerful. It's kind of like an execute ability. Wow. That's really powerful. I mean, it's level 10. I'm not concerned about it. It's level 10. The game is almost over, but that's a pretty cool ability. Someone made a note, OE. Yeah, it does seem very light on hope usage. Yeah, which it seems very cool, right? Like, it all uses stress and hit points. You know, there's a couple. Life lead. You know what? It's weird, OE. Maybe as we get higher level, right? Lower level, it's like hit point, stress, hit point, stress, hit point, stress. Okay, Blood Puppet is a hope. Hit point, stress. But then as you get higher level, you get things like spend a hope, spend 2 hope, So it's kind of almost like you shift from stress and hit points to hope, you know, which is kind of cool. Well, yeah, this is pretty neat. It definitely feels very flavorful. You know, there's a lot of neat stuff here. I like what they're doing with the AoEs. I don't know if this is you know. Now that, like you said, Mark Clore makes a great point, right? It doesn't deal damage. It makes them mark hit points, which makes sense considering it directly affects the blood of the target. Which is totally makes sense, right? You're bypassing the armor. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a really cool, way to, sort of look at that. Can we look at the adversaries as well? No, Valdal, we're not going to look at the adversaries today. I wanted to just do a tight 1 hour, because it's a lunchtime stream and all that other stuff. Sorry. Somebody sent me a message. Danjamin, you're going to go to your meeting at work now. I'm apologizing for that. Yes. Smendon, I doubt they'll ever do an errata, but we'll see. We'll see. What are some hypothetical classes that you could see using the blood domain? Well, obviously some sort of like Death Knight or some sort of vampire warrior. You could do some sort of like a Blood and Midnight. You could do some sort of like, Nosferatu type class or something like that, which I think could be really, really cool. like a blood elf, a blood mage, of course. Yes, obviously. So I think that you could have there's a lot of, I think, overlap for that. There's definitely, a certain amount of edge lordness that comes with with the blood domain. So I'm not as proficient in edge lorddom as others, but I think it's a really interesting way that they, kind of, my takeaway from it is the theme that they showed here was this idea of, instead of using hope mostly for spells, they used a lot of hit points and stress, manipulation, reduction, spending hope and stress to power through, and then sort of kind of gaining your abilities back. And then there's this kind of additional flavors, which, could be anything, but tying into this idea of like marking them, tying into this idea of the Bloodhunter. So there's a little bit of like, sometimes we see that with domains, right? Where the domain has to kind of carry some of the class baggage. Because like Midnight is a perfect example of this, where because the Midnight is tied to the rogue, and because like classes are pretty light in Daggerheart, like Midnight also has to kind of carry the burden of like having like the thiefy tool ability. And I don't necessarily know that feels midnighty to me, but so there's that if there's a downside to the brevity of the Daggerheart classes, it's that sometimes the domains have to pick up some of the class baggage. And then when you start combining those domains with other class identities, sometimes it feels a little bit weird. And that's why when you look at some class, when you look at some domains, it feels like, okay, half of these abilities are for one class and half of these abilities are for another class. And yes, technically, your rogue could take all these abilities, but it feels a little strange sometimes, like when the sorcerer, which has the Midnight, you're like, why would the sorcerer have all these like rogue abilities? Well, because Midnight has all these rogue abilities. But why does Midnight have all these rogue abilities? Well, because it's the rogue domain. So I think that's one of the quote unquote weak spots. I mean, no game is perfect. Daggerheart, definitely is not among them being perfect. It made certain trade-offs, and I think for the most part, it is a win, Yeah, right. The sorcerer taking the strangle one, right? Yeah, the stranglehold. I don't remember what it's called, but I think it's just called strangle, maybe, or strangulation. Yeah, the one where you choke them out and then they start taking damage. You're like, why does your sorcerer have that? You're like, I don't know, I just took it. We also see that sometimes, not to go on too much of a rant, but because sometimes the classes that are next to each other have very different ability scores, and because sometimes the domain cards reference those other ability scores. And so you're like, okay, my sorcerer is very heavy presence, and so half of these abilities rely on ability scores that I'm not really even using or good at, Smendon, you could totally justify anything in the fiction, and you could totally have it be a Darth Vader force choke. And you know what? You should do that, because that's a lot fucking cooler. But, then the question is like, why is it using finesse? And you're like, well, you could change it. And yeah, you probably could, and you should. And I don't think it would really change the game that much if you changed it to instinct or, presence or something like that, for sure. But, now Smendon, on the other hand, when sorcerer was shunned and had to learn to garrote people on the streets. I was kind of going for something a little bit more magical, but yeah. And ultimately I do, Aldark, I think, is right. They had to pick their battles. And, if they came into this game and they didn't give people their classic D&D archetypes, people would have, pitched a fit. So they had to do what they needed to do in order to make characters fit into their game, even if it doesn't necessarily always sort of, perfectly align. And, that's the cost of doing business. People have certain expectations, and you by God, you need to meet them. I mean, I remember Vin and we gave Draw Steel a bunch of shit because it didn't have a basic melee skeleton warrior, clad in rusty chain with a rusty longsword or scimitar and a battered shield. It had some weird like picking bones out of its body and throwing them at you, and we were just like, yeah. As for Smendon saying, I will die on the hill that no system should have a wizard and a sorcerer, one is enough. I will disagree with that, only because I think that there is enough of a difference in the class fantasy between the super bookish, very, surrounded by tomes and codices and, gray old wizard with a pointy hat and wearing glasses and, being more of an academic and a researcher, versus the fantasy of the character that is sort of bending and channeling raw energy and is much more dynamic and doesn't even know how to read. I think those are very different fantasies. And, I think the fantasy worlds are typically large enough that we can fit all of them into an umbrella, So anyways, very cool. It was fun that we got to hang out and take a look at this new class. Go check out the Void. There's also some new adversaries and new adversaries and new adversaries and new environments in the Void. I'm sure I'll take a look at them as well. Enjoy your Halloween if you're going out and having fun tonight. Stay safe out there. And thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you next time on Knights of Last Call. Peace out.